Day 16 of the war with Hamas. The IDF is stepping up air and artillery strikes to unprecedented levels to create what it's called the best conditions for the impending ground operation into Gaza. This is Defense Minister Gallant laid out the stages of the coming challenge. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Tanks are holding live fire exercises near the border for what the IDF calls the main mission to end terrorist rule in Gaza. The army is repeatedly warning Palestinian non-combatants to head to southern Gaza, where there are safe havens and humanitarian aid from the Egyptian border crossing at Rafah.
לביטחונכם האישי, נו דרומה. אנחנו נמשיך לתקוף באזור העיר עזה ביתר שאת ונגביר את התקיפות. הציוד ההומניטרי שנכנס לאונר"א, עליו אנחנו מפקחים, זה שנכנס ממצרים, עליו אנחנו מפקחים עכשיו בבסיסי אונר"א לוודא שהמים, התרופות והאוכל מחולקים לאותו אזור הומניטרי שקבענו.
The chief of staff met with officers tasked with the defeat of Hamas.
ניכנס לרצועת עזה, אנחנו ניכנס למשימה מבצעית, מקצועית, להשמיד את הפעילים של חמאס, את התשתיות של חמאס, ואנחנו גם נזכור בראש שלנו את התמונות והמראות והנופלים משבת לפני שבועיים.
Israel says continuing massive strikes on Hamas targets are paving the way for the ground forces. The timing for the start of the ground incursion awaits orders from the nation's war cabinet, which convened again last night. Israel says its offensive against Hamas is aimed at destroying the terrorist group after the October 7th massacres. 2,500 terrorists burst across the border into Israel from Gaza, murdering some 1,400 people and seizing over 200 hostages under the cover of thousands of rockets fired at Israeli towns and cities. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant laid out the war plan at the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee.
אנחנו נמוטט את ארגון החמאס, נשמיד את התשתיות הצבאיות שלו והשלטוניות שלו, זה דבר ראשון. זה שלב שלא יהיה קל, יהיו לו מחירים.
In the meantime, Hamas continues firing rockets into southern and central Israel. Ashkelon and Sderot were most targeted. Most residents of the southern border communities have evacuated, and no casualties were reported.
And security officials have updated the number of hostages believed to be held by Hamas in Gaza to 212, including 30 children. Over the weekend, Hamas released 2 American hostages to the International Red Cross in the first sign of life from any of the hostages since October 7th. Their release was reportedly arranged with U.S. and Qatari involvement. Meanwhile, the families of the hostages are stepping up their campaigns for the release of all of their loved ones. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
In the first sign of life from any of the estimated 212 captives since their capture by Hamas terrorists on October 7th, Mother Judith and daughter Natalie Ra'anan are now safely in Israel. They were first turned over to the International Red Cross in Gaza and then to Israeli officials, and they were whisked to safety.
The release of the hostages in Gaza today is a sliver of hope. We are extremely relieved that the families can now be reunited after 2 weeks of agony. We continue to call for the immediate release of all hostages, and we stand ready to help them and their families in any way we can.
The release of the Ra'anans was reportedly arranged through Qatari contacts with Hamas following pressure from the U.S. Israeli officials said that Hamas' decisions was made unilaterally and that Jerusalem didn't offer anything in exchange. President Biden spoke to the hostages after their release. The U.S. president said efforts are continuing to secure the release of all the hostages. Throughout Israel, there was relief that 2 captives were now safe, but also a widespread feeling that Hamas used the release for propaganda purposes. An emotional rally was held in Tel Aviv by families of the hostages.
We've lost complete contact. There's no sign of life, no signal. It's been 2 weeks now, and we are here. I'm here together with all these families, hundreds of them. There's over 200 hostages, and we're all here to cry out and reach out to the entire world, to the international community to help us, and we're demanding to bring them back now.
Anger was expressed over the decision to allow humanitarian aid to enter southern Gaza, while there have been no reports on the status of hostages or delivery of medical or humanitarian needs for those held captive.
All the It's crazy. We are in hell. In hell.
We are in hell.
And we want our lovers back home now.
And the fighting between the IDF and Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon has been the most intense since the start of the war with Hamas. This amid reports that IDF aircraft reportedly struck Aleppo and Damascus airports, damaging runways and putting them both out of service. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Rather than isolated incidents and the tit-for-tat response of the past 2 weeks, the cross-border violence has spread to include the entire Lebanese border. Over the weekend, a soldier was killed, 2 troops and a pair of Thai workers were wounded by Hezbollah rockets and RPGs. IDF drones responded to the latest attacks by taking out Hezbollah squads responsible for attacks near Shlomi, Margaliot, and Mount Dov. Hezbollah posts along the border were destroyed, and artillery blasted Hezbollah positions. The military also said that fighter jets struck a series of Hezbollah positions in South Lebanon in response to the missile attacks. Foreign reports say that some 30 Hezbollah fighters have been killed by IDF strikes in recent days. The city of Kiryat Shmona was ordered evacuated over the weekend, and the Defense Ministry today ordered the evacuation of additional communities within 4 kilometers of the Lebanese border.
פינוי מסוג זה, שכבר נעשה בכמה יישובים בגבול הצפון, מאפשר לצה"ל להרחיב את חופש הפעולה המבצעי נגד ארגון הטרור חיזבאללה.
There was anger from some of the residents who say they do not feel safe.
ובחדשות אתה אומר, כולם התושבים שלי בטוחים. לא מאמי, אני בחדר ביטחון שכל טיל יכול לפגוע בו כי הוא כבר לא ביטחון. אני רוצה פינוי למקום ללא אזעקות. ונראה לך הגיוני לתל אביב? לתל אביב?
Others took the news of evacuation from the north more calmly.
בעזרת השם נתפנה ויהיה טוב ונחזור לעיר שלנו חזקים יותר עם צבא חזק והשם ישמור אותנו, שכל עם ישראל יהיו בריאים, שכל החטופים שלנו יחזרו בשלום וכל צה"ל ישמור עלינו. יאללה.
The soldier killed on the border was identified as Reserve Staff Sergeant Omer Balva, a dual Israeli-American citizen living in Maryland. When the war began, he flew to Israel to join his unit.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative, available on the web, Android, and Apple. And joining us now with more on the war in Israel and the prospects for regional instability is Dr. Mordechai Kedal, an expert on the Middle East. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
So the northern border is heating up. We've seen Hezbollah, Iran's terror proxy in Lebanon, fire missiles at Israel, and Iran threatening it will send Hezbollah to join the war. What is your assessment on this front?
Well, in this conflict, which started 2 weeks ago, there are some parties which are pushing into this conflict. First of all, we all know that Iran is highly involved in whatever happens here. Secondly, we see the militias in Syria and Iraq, and we saw the missiles and the drones coming from Yemen. And this morning, there was a piece of information which talks about some vessels from China, which are approaching the region as well. So here you are, the United States is in the Mediterranean. China will be somewhere, probably in the Persian Gulf, in order to protect the Iranians. And here you are, you have an international, and I would even say global problem, which started with some jihadists who slaughtered 1,500 Israelis.
Now, the number one question on the minds of most Israelis, will Hezbollah join the war? You are an expert on Lebanon. What can you tell us about Hezbollah's hold on Lebanon today?
Well, some say that the fact that already, I think, 6 Israelis were killed since last week in Lebanon, it is a war. 6 Israelis being killed is a war. Others would say it is only clashes on the border, while the the majority of the power of the Hezbollah, like the missiles, are not yet thrown into the battle. So depends how you assess a war. Definitely, you can say that there is a warming situation between Israel and Lebanon. And the question is, to what degree this warming will reach.
Now, the United States has repeatedly warned that it's concerned that this will escalate into a regional conflict beyond just Israel and Hamas or Israel and Hezbollah as well. Do you see this as a real possibility?
Look, as much as I heard the excellent speeches of President Biden, he was more than clear that he will not allow Hezbollah and Iran interfere in the issues between Israel and Hamas. He said, don't. Means if you think about interfering, don't. And he repeated it 3 times in his last speech. So definitely the United States, and they actually sent a whole fleet of vessels to the eastern part of the Mediterranean. And I heard that there's another one, another aircraft carrier on its way to this region. And definitely this is a threat towards Iran and Lebanon in order to try to keep the flames as low as possible only in the Gaza Strip.
And what about the larger view? Looking at Russia and China, they've emerged as very hostile to Israel and have strengthened their ties with Iran. Is a new world order now taking shape?
Well, this new world order is already for years already, because we have now definitely a Cold War with some hot war in Ukraine and now in Israel between the Western coalition, which is the United States, Western Europe, Israel, Australia, New Zealand, against or vis-a-vis a new coalition of states, Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, South Africa, Venezuela, and Iran brought into this equation Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza as well. So definitely we see, again, there's 2 blocks in the world, and the struggle is open. After all, we all know about the tension between the United States and China, about the southern China Sea, and what happens in Ukraine is definitely a struggle between these 2 blocks. And now, between Israel and Hamas, this is a struggle between the 2 blocks, the democratic bloc vis-a-vis the bloc which did not hear about human rights, political freedoms, democracy, and prosperity.
Dr. Kedar, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much.
And over 2 weeks into the war with Hamas, and the Israeli economy, particularly the high-tech sector, is starting to feel the effects. As such, the Israel Innovation Authority is taking measures to ensure that this important sector, the pinnacle of the Israeli economy, is protected during these difficult and uncertain times.
The Israeli economy has also taken a hit since the onset of the war against Hamas. And many promising startups are now struggling at a time of uncertainty and war. As such, the Israel Innovation Authority has stepped up to launch a FastTrack grant with an initial allocation of some 100 million shekel for around 100 Israeli startup companies with significant technological assets, as well as short runways for companies struggling to raise funds from their existing investors. The channel operating under the R&D Fund program is designed for Israeli companies who need additional funds to extend their runway, giving them more time to fully utilize their available resources. Application for the program will open in November. Additionally, the Innovation Authority also requested that the European Union's Horizon program postpone application deadlines for Israelis applying to leading European programs, some of which provide substantial grants of up to 2.5 million euros, in addition to the possibility of gaining equity investment of up to 15 million euros. Dror Bin, CEO of the Israeli Innovation Authority, said that the high-tech sector, which was already facing declining investment volumes over the past 18 months, has also been impacted by the current crisis, adding that the impact is more pronounced in startup companies that urgently need funding. He said that the new channel is designed to provide certainty and cash flow that will help Israeli companies overcome the crisis and be an economic growth engine upon exiting it.
And for just a little bit of positive news today, florists in Tel Aviv have come together to design a beautiful floral display, sending a message of solidarity to the world and to Israelis here at home. ILTV's William Sharon has the report.
In a beautiful show of solidarity, Tel Aviv florists have designed a floral display of support for Israelis following the October 7th massacre by the terror organization Hamas.
So after 2 weeks of making bouquets and wreaths for funerals, we've decided to create in the Habima Square in the main city Tel Aviv in Israel a hashtag all made with flowers. We stand with Israel, and this is what President Biden said at his speech to support our nation. This memorial is meant to show optimism, is meant to show strength to our people after 2 terrible weeks.
Beyond showing optimism, the organizers said the display sends a message to the world to support Israel as it maintains its right to defend its citizens.
It's a very important message for the world to give us the window and the opportunity to protect our country. This is a war that wasn't started by Israel. This is a war that our people were first line, and instead of the army, where people were killed in their own homes. And we would hope to find space with the world to react and to make sure that this sort of second Holocaust would not happen again.
Additionally, participants hope that the display will act as a message and as a warning to the growing tide of anti-Semitism sweeping across the globe.
I think we see that around the world there is a rising anti-Semite, and I'm hoping that the rest of the West world will see and understand what's going on here. And I think this message is what we're hoping the world, what the world is actually what the world is seeing, and that the world stands with Israel right now.
And now we're joined by Jewish National Fund USA Ambassador Risa Arenson to shed light on the incredible work the organization is doing to support the people of Israel and the monumental tasks ahead of them. Welcome, Risa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here today.
So can you share how your Israel Resilience campaign is impacting Israelis affected by the recent atrocities?
Yes. We have an ongoing, long-standing relationship with the communities on the border with Gaza, and our team has been on the ground to give immediate relief and to do whatever we need to do to help with these critical times. One of the things that we've been doing is we've evacuated over 15,000 people who were hit from the hardest communities on the border, and that includes transportation and emergency housing. We provide firefighting and protective equipment to fight against the ongoing rocket fire that's destroyed homes and buildings and livelihoods. We send bedding and hygiene supplies for those displaced from their homes. Most importantly, psychological treatment, because the residents have been through such horrific times and they're going to need that. And we have resilience centers which are available to them. We also have 2 high school campuses right now in Israel that are housing over 50 people. And we have our madrachim who have stayed behind in Beersheba and Hod HaSharon on these campuses to provide programming and activities for the children who desperately need this. So these are just a few of the things we've been doing. We also had over 100 students from our Alexander Muss High School who came home last week. But while they were there on October 7th, during this horrific time. We took them to shelter, and at that time, they raised over $100,000 for the relief effort. They also packaged over 1,500 packages to give to people in need. And I was lucky enough to be at Logan Airport in Boston last week when they returned with tears in their eyes, and they said to us, they asked us, when can we go back? We just want to be there. We didn't want to come home. We know we had to, but we want to be there. One of the students asked me, she said, Risa, do you think I'll be able to go back in December? I really need to be there. My heart was breaking, and all I could do was hug these children.
Incredible show of support. I want to ask, because fundraising on such a significant scale is no small feat. What strategies or maybe sort of innovative approaches are you using to engage, supporters for this Israel Resilience campaign?
Thank you. That's a great question. In JNF USA, we are all about empowering our supporters to have their philanthropic voices heard. And so many people want to get involved and have those voices heard. So here at JNF USA, we created a peer-to-peer fundraising platform which allows anyone to fundraise for Israel and use their own words. So if you want to raise money for Israeli families suffering from this horrific massacre from October 7th, please Google JNF peer-to-peer, and you can follow the easy steps. I could do it, you can do it, and you can have your voice heard. We're also leveraging the power of matching gifts. Last week, we received an anonymous 1 million match. So what does that mean? If you give $100, then Israel receives 200. And the other thing we're doing are phone-a-thons. We had one at my home last week. People around the community are doing so as well. And we'll have another one next week. And what does that mean? We're calling everyone in our network. We're telling them what's going on. We're educating them. We're using our voices to help.
So incredible initiatives from JNF USA. Risa, thank you so much for sharing with us this incredible initiative that you're undertaking. It's, I think, really making a difference here in Israel.
Thank you.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight throughout the country with lows of around 20 degrees Celsius or 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy skies and warm temperatures expected around the country with highs of 30 degrees Celsius or 87 degrees Fahrenheit. And now, more than 1,300 babies, children, elderly men, women, soldiers were murdered in cold blood by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. The scale of the tragedy is so large that we cannot mention every name right now, but we will slowly share their stories and ensure their memories live on. So many lives senselessly lost, hundreds more still unaccounted for, and hundreds being held hostage in Gaza. Not a single Israeli is not impacted by the horrific events of October 7th. Today, all of Israel mourns. And that's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channel, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our new and improved website, ILTV.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.